Hello guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. If you're here for the very first time, do well to subscribe to this channel because on a regular basis I post monitoring and evaluation updates, tutorials, you name it. Okay? So now, as usual, I always want to give things for free to all my friends, all the support. I really appreciate it. Some of you people write to me asking for help. I'm always there to help. But there's one thing I want to tell you guys. Please feel free to download these two very free important ebooks. One is called Learn Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide. Then you have the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide 2020. These are very powerful ebooks. Please, the link is in the description. Click it, get these free ebooks and enjoy what is in these books. As usual, okay. Yeah, so now another thing, guys. Please, I hope you're not getting bored already, but another thing, there's this course I'm running, how to set up a monitoring and evaluation system step by step. It's like my best course I've ever produced on Udemy. It's highly rated at the moment. It's 5 stars. 2 students have enrolled. I'm happy to say that, but I would want to see more. So please support me, enroll in this course. If you want to get a discount, of course the discount is 90% off, but in case it isn't, you can still use the coupon code below. As usual, there are timestamps. Use the timestamps to navigate the area of this video which you feel you want to gain more insight instead of watching the whole entire video. Okay, let's get started with this tutorial, shall we? What is an M&E system? Okay, I feel that I should explain this to you guys. A monitoring and evaluation system it's the holistic thing. It's everything that keeps monitoring and evaluation activities running. I like to liken it to the human circulatory system. You know, the circulatory system, if you look at that image on the left, you find that as a human being, we have so many components that help us function. You know, you have to realize that for us to be here today, for us to be alive, it's because blood is continuously circulating in our bodies. So I'm not the scientist, but I learned this in school, and I'm sure you can relate to it that everything we do, it's because we have blood, and that is that blood that makes us alive because of the oxygen. And there are so many components that help us breathe. We've got the heart, we've got the veins, we've got the arteries. All these components help us. So with a monitoring and evaluation system, they are also components, okay? They are also components. So like if you look at the circulatory system, the heart is pumping the blood. You've got the lungs, which brings oxygen into the body. You've got the veins that carry out the oxygenated blood out of the body, and then you've got the arteries that circulate the oxygenated blood. So for an M&E system, what are the components, guys? Well, first things first is the funding. And I really don't want to talk so much about this because it's obvious. I mean, money makes the world go round. Without it, you can't do anything. You just be stagnant. You won't be moving. You can't just do anything. So in a monitoring and evaluation, there must be funding allocated, and it shouldn't just be mere funds sitting there. It has to be adequate. And sometimes this is what people fail to understand. They want to bend the rules a bit to make things cheaper, not knowing that it has an impact in the long run. Okay, so it's very important we pay attention to these components. Another component is the M&E guidelines. When I first joined the first organization I worked for, believe it or not, they had that desire that willpower to implement monitoring and evaluation, but they didn't have guidelines. And when we say guidelines, these are simply instructions on how certain things should be done. Take, for instance, if you're going to do a monitoring activity, what are the procedures? How should you go about undertaking such an activity? Because I may join an organization as an M&D officer, I might have my own idea on how this should be done, but there must be a standard idea. Because what will happen is that even if I left that organization, which I eventually did, by the way, other people will come in with their own ideas. Then you have other people again coming in with their own ideas, and there is no coordination, there is no proper consistency there. So the guidelines have to be there. So when we talk about guidelines, we are also including the M&D plan, we are also including the M&D framework, we are also including other instructions that tell staff who is responsible for what, how do you go about undertaking an activity, who do you write to, who do you seek approval from, who do you report to in case of a challenge. Okay, so all those things should be there in the M&D guidelines. Then when we talk about the tools, we're simply talking about the actual data collection tools, because M&D is all about data collection. It's all about data analysis and reporting on the data. So the tools need to be in place. So now, first of all, I also want to let you know that organizations have systems. Okay, there are two different systems. Sometimes these systems may be one and the same thing, but from what I know is that when you have a project running, that project should have its own M&D system. Okay, but then you've got the organizational M&D system, which is the system that the implementing organization is using regardless of whatever project comes. Okay, so I hope I'm not confusing you here, but just so that you keep that in mind, things can run parallel, or you can have just one system. Then you've got the most important component. Okay, believe you me, it's the human resource, the M&D personnel. Sadly, and I don't know why it's like that. Sadly, you'll find that if, for instance, you have an organization buying a Toyota Hilux, okay, they'll buy a Toyota Hilux. You discover that they'll actually treasure that Toyota Hilux more than their M&D personnel or more than their staff. You know, they don't want to see that Hilux with scratches. Of course, they'll tell you that no, we give you medical insurance and all these other things. Anyway, that's a debate for the other day. But what I'm saying is that it shouldn't be like that. You know, the personnel are so important, especially for this thing to run. And there are different levels, okay, depending also on how big your project is. You don't need to you don't really need to populate so many staff in this section. It's all dependent on how big the project is, but ideally you should have someone sitting on top, the M&D coordinator, who is coordinating all the different functions that he's supervising. So he may be coordinating M&D officers, and those officers may be coordinating field staff. So these people are important. Without them, believe you me, you won't have any data anywhere. So an M&D systems audit is really crucial. Okay. Okay, so what I can say, guys, or ladies, is that the systems audit is more of a review. I don't usually like to use that word audit, but it's a good word in a sense, because normally when people hear the word audit, their eyebrows, you know, they raise their eyebrows. Okay, so maybe it's a good thing to use because it deserves that attention. So the whole issue is that you're inspecting the whole system. Okay. I showed you the components there. All right. So the issue is that you're not only fulfilling the expectations of the stakeholders, but you're also fulfilling the expectations of what a system should be like. Excuse me. Because quite frankly, guys, donors, if you're getting funding from a donor, they consider having a monitoring and evaluation system as very important. That is what will justify whether they will give you the money or not in many cases. And the reason is that they don't want to be pumping in money on something, on a system that is one, not trustworthy, that is not transparent, and also, you know, the one that just doesn't work. They don't want that kind of thing. So the issue is that there is need to conduct inspections regularly. Okay. The M&E systems audit is not about pointing fingers, no, or about getting someone fired, not at all. But the whole issue is that when you do this system, you are trying to improve on the weaknesses, and you also want to ensure that it is fully functional, and functional in terms of, doing the right things at the right time. Sorry. Okay. So what exactly is being inspected? I showed you the four components there of an M&E system. You've got the adequacy of funding. Okay, adequacy of M&E guidelines, adequacy of tools, adequacy of M&E personnel. So the way you're looking at it there is just the tip of the iceberg, because I've been in these systems audits, and really, if you're doing it for the first time, you'll find that it's actually a lot of work. But as you do it the third, fourth time, you get really used, and you also appreciate why these provisions are there. So let's dig deeper. Whenever you're doing this systems audit, if you're looking at the tools and guidelines, okay, the key questions you're asking yourself are issues to do with the adequacy of the data collection tools. It's easy on paper to develop tools, okay? It's easy on paper. You look at the logical framework, you say, okay, the indicators are there. All I need to do is get the indicators and turn them into questions, okay? It may be easy. I agree with you. But when you start piloting those tools, then will you realize how difficult they are. And it is at this point that you'll find that some of the tools you may have developed, or you may not even have developed those tools, but field personnel are using those tools. So what you'll find is that it could be that some of these tools have, like when it comes to data collection, there are challenges. Could it be that the tools have not been set in such a way that they are user friendly? Because when you have such challenges, it can lead to errors. So the other question you need to ask yourself is, do these tools require revisions? Sometimes, for instance, like I told you, there's the issue of user friendliness. But then it could be that the project has certain data needs. You see, the data needs have increased, maybe because the organization is has demands from stakeholders, so they are forced to collect data that was not initially planned. So you may be required to revise those M&D tools immediately. Okay. And another thing is the data quality. Very important. And guys, I need to tell you one thing. This is what usually makes M&D officers maybe get demoted, because simply because of the quality of the data. You see, people, when it comes to data quality, you have to ensure that they are high, of high level, high standard, because they ultimately what will happen is that when these reports are shown to stakeholders, if stakeholders question your findings, okay, and you yourself can't even understand your own findings, it will question how reliable this M&D system is. It will also raise questions as to whether this system can be trusted or whether the figures are just being cooked, you see? So you need to take care of this immediately. So one of the things, and when you see this as a weakness, make sure that people are capacitated not to repeat these kind of errors. Okay, so what are the challenges? Okay, you need to find out the challenges, document those challenges, share them with management, look at a way forward. Another thing is that guidelines, like I mentioned earlier on, when I was working as M&D officer in the first organization I joined, there wasn't even an M&D plan, not even guidelines, you see. So the question is, with these things not there, are you sure things can run? The answer is no. So you have to identify those gaps and mend them. So what about funding? This is a debate, unfortunately. Some organizations take this seriously. It's non-negotiable. If you are receiving $10 million, between 500,000 to $1 million should go to monitoring and evaluation activities, because that is 10%, right? So the issue is, it varies. Organizations have their own priorities. You'll find that at global level, let's say you have different NGOs around the world, but you have this one mother body. The NGOs around the world, the field offices, the country offices may be taking M&D activities seriously, but you discover that the headquarters, HQ, don't see the need to have these things. So, of course, they see the need to have monitoring and evaluation, but they just don't see the need to pump in so much money, such that if you tell them, no, I need this additional stuff, they start scratching their head. So you have to be able, when this systems audit is going to tell you whether this funding is adequate and what are the implications of not having enough funding. Okay, what are the implications? Because without the money, you can't, you're constrained. So this has to be well documented. Another thing is that funding that is coming late is also a huge red flag. It just destroys things. Okay, so things need to come on time. And if there are challenges, there should be remedial measures to, control such challenges. So I talked about M&D personnel. So you discover that the monitoring and evaluation team, you don't, when you hear the word team, sometimes people tend to think, oh, it's a huge number of people. It doesn't really need to be very, very big, okay? But all we are saying is that with what you have and with the size of the project, are these M&D personnel adequate? And do they have the capacity to do the job? Okay. So remember, I started by saying that this systems audit is not there to get someone fired. Not at all. If you identify that someone in the team lacks capacity, there are so many trainings around the world. You've got online trainings that are cheap, okay, I wouldn't say cheap, but they are affordable because I mean, look at the Udemy trainings on Udemy. Those ones are very good. They are affordable, but there could be also other trainings that are, you know, very good. Okay, could be better than also what I'm offering. So you see, you in this systems audit, you identify the capacity gaps. Is it data analysis? Is it program management? Is it budget management and things like that? Then with this audit, you use the findings to build your team. Okay. And that will help a lot. It will go a long way. You'll be well respected. And another thing is that this is an opportunity to identify institutions that can help with capacity building. And it's always good to have a mix of, because if you look at uh, universities, for instance, okay, they are good when it comes to capacity building. But the only problem is that they are more academic oriented. All right, and they don't seem to be in touch sometimes with what is really happening on the ground. So sometimes it's good if you are bringing in trainers, have a good mix of university, I mean academicians, and then have also the actual people who are in this job come up with a training, train your staff, and then you're home and dry. Okay, okay, so you know what, all these things I was talking about in my M&D systems step by step course, they are there. And I would want you to enroll in this course because it is very good. I can't lie to you. This is my best course I've done since I started on Udemy. So please find time to enroll in this course. It's only $9. If the discount expires, you can use the coupon code which is there that you can see right now. So please use it, enroll in this course, become a king of M&E. So thank you very much. I've been your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so happy you were here with me. Write to me, say hi. Until we meet again, see you on the other side. Bye.